外公，这个茶给您。
谢谢，谢谢。
Are you one of them?
One of who?
Never mind. Sorry.
我们和你失去联系很久了。
任务很危险，这个地方不是很友善。
我注意到了，我以为能和他们讲道理。
我想他们不需要爱和和平的。我跟他们一起生活70年了，我很了解他们。
还有呢？
任何规劝都是没用的，他们具有毁灭性，又不肯改变。
这是你对他们的正确评估吗？
最可悲的是，他们明明知道结果，感觉到的，不过他们不知道怎么办。
那就这么决定吧，我会尽快启动程序的。我们做好离开的准备。
I'm staying.
You can't stay here.
I can, and I will.
If you stay, you'll die.
I know. This is my home now.
You yourself called them a destructive race.
That's true. But still, there is another side. You see, I love them. This is a very strange thing. I can't find a way to explain it to you. For many years, I cursed my luck for being sent here. Human life is difficult. But as this life is coming to an end, I consider myself lucky to have lived it.
John Lilly once put it this way: there are no limits at all to the human mind whatsoever, except those we impose on ourselves because of our beliefs. And those limits are also beliefs to be transcended. And that's a view that suggests that the possibilities of human transformation are virtually infinite. And we have no way of knowing the outer horizon of what it means to be human.
And really, to understand all this, everything, you have to go very, very deep into a study of history, consciousness, neurophysiology, everything. You have to be the supreme eclectic type of leaning, and you really have to be wanting to know who you are and what everything's about.
And the thing that you'll find when you go to sacred sites, if you're very humble about it, is that you are on a personal journey, and the sacred site will respond to you in a way that is appropriate only to you. The information is always what you are searching for. And it's the intent you give that energy that defines whether it is used for right action or not. And it is inside these sacred spaces that you will be reminded that you are a god, that you are a bright star.
So what you're trying to do is move through the course without ricocheting off walls or creating karma. You're trying to slide through things smoothly. How do you do that? It's called flowing. There's a technique that you can do that will allow you to touch some part of your inner being that has more knowledge than your conscious state does.
Don't you agree, Miss Bidlow?
Must we fight a war over words? I'm exhausted by these overwrought alarums about the Frenchification of our language. It's the end of the century. These ancient prejudices have no use. Dr. Belden, you adopt new terms as they become relevant to your practice of psychoanalysis, I imagine.
Practically every week of late.
Language requires not stasis, but specificity. I should be thrilled to excise the word nice. It's Vegas paste, isn't that right, Augustus? Augustus!
Sorry?
We were discussing it earlier. The specificity of modern language.
Oh, yes. It's very nice.
If it's French terminology we're discussing, there are a few terms we Britons simply don't have a word for.
Oh, excuse me.
I suppose we all know the sort of terms he means.
What on earth is Swan doing here?
No, I know. It's so impulsive.
Lord Masson, you're well, I hope.
I am, Miss Bidlow, thank you. Dr. Belden. Swan?
We were discussing the panic a few old men are having about certain French terms. There was one debated on the Parliament floor. What was it?
Employees.
Employees, and here we say it and yet live.
It is not panicking to abhor something. Neither is it useful to replace a perfectly good Anglo-Saxon word with some foreigner's flourish. In England, we say the employed. What possible benefit in replacing it with employees?
The singular. One may refer to a single employee, whereas the employed can only be used to describe a mass of people. It doesn't allow for the idea that a single worker may be a whole and meaningful being.
Mrs. Amalia True, Miss Adair, may I introduce Lord Masson? Mrs. True runs the orphanage.
Indeed.
Which one's the ugly one?
I take it then that you are yourselves among the afflicted.
Touched, yes. We don't consider ourselves afflicted.
Perhaps some women are more fortunate in the nature of their ailment than others.
That's true, but more suffer from society's perception than their own debilitation.
What's wrong with you?
I think he means me. Where to begin?
No, it's just you're quite nice, and you have the charity, the orphanage. That seems normal.
Miss Bidlow runs the orphanage. We're just the employed.
Shockingly, I'd say my brother had spoken for everyone. They're anxious to know what your turns are.
A turn is a trick.
It's not a trick. Penance is an inventor, a creator, really.
Well, there's only one creator. No, I can see energy, potential energy, like with electricity. I can see where it wants to go or move or settle. It helps me put things together.
And yours?
Mrs. True tends to be a few steps ahead of the rest of us.
A prognosticator.
Nothing so grand.
So I shouldn't ask how I'm going to die.
No, but one can safely assume it will involve a French word.
You see the future?
Snippets. It's as confusing as it is useful. You were a soldier. You've seen men who suddenly feel themselves back in battle. Well, sometimes I go forward.
I never said I was a soldier.
You're probably going to.
No, it's the eyes. Assessing every threat.
Lord Masson is the last line of defense against the scourge of modernity.
I'm old and I've seen too much change to fight against the tide, but chaos is not change. Shouting for recognition does not make a people worthy of it. There's a harmony to our world that's worth preserving.
As I understand it, a harmony is made up of different voices sounding different notes.
Yes, and one is always above the other. Ladies?
The scholars still refuse to hand over the last alethiometer. And now they've given Asriel all the funds he needs. If he succeeds in proving the existence of these other worlds, it will contradict centuries of teaching. There will always be free thinkers and heretics, unless we deal with the root of the problem. That is why Mrs. Coulter's work is so important. What progress has she made?
The doctors at Bolvanger are close to perfecting the inoculation against the effects of dust.
I am relieved to hear that. If we can protect our children from the corrupting influence of dust before their demons settle, then we will nurture a generation at peace with itself. One that will never question our authority again.
It's for you, Lyra.
What is this?
An alethiometer, also known as a golden compass. It was given to the college by Lord Asriel many years ago, and now I'm giving it to you. I feel you are meant to have it.
What's it for?
It tells the truth. We've always tried to acquaint you with the truth. But the secrets at the heart of things elude scholars and authorities. But this lets you glimpse things as they are.
Lyra, we know your tale all the way up until you run away and the Costas found you. But is there anything else you can tell us? Is there anything you may have forgot?
Don't show it to them. The Master of Jordan gave me this.
I thought they was all taken by the Magisterium. It's an alethiometer. It's a truth measure. A golden compass. It enables you to see what others wish to hide. You've got 3 hands you can control. By pointing at 3 symbols, you can ask any sort of question you can imagine. Once you've got your question framed, this blue needle points to more symbols that give you the answer.
Could it be used to find the missing children?
Not by me. The art was jealously guarded.
Can I try?
All right.
What are you doing, Lyra? You don't know how to read it. Hush, Pan. Well, the serpent is cunning, like the gobblers. And the pot could mean a recipe or a plan. And the baby, that means kids.
One thing I do know, Lyra. You mustn't grasp at the answer. Hold the question in your mind, but lightly, like it was something alive.
Hey, you epic being, welcome. Andre Hodge, Infinite Potential Healing, servant of truth with you once more. Thank you as always for allowing me to be a part of your journey. I offer that this era of being into this sort of stuff, it's an aspect of your peak awareness era, and I want to instill the value of that, of your time with me and with anyone else out there into these sort of things, because I've shared my journey a lot. I've probably interacted with many of you at various times and stuff like that, and the really core thing about an individual being into these sort of things, you've probably been through a lot during your life, right? It hasn't probably been too pleasant and stuff. This isn't sort of a path that you would go on organically if everything was good and stuff like that. So I just really want to instill the value of what you've been through just to even get to this, and be able to be willing to accept these sort of concepts and stuff like that. To me, truth and the quest for truth and understanding and appreciation of what has gone on, to be able to have a solid foundation to refer to and navigate this life, let alone invest in what I offer, which an aspect of it is relative to our multidimensional intuitive abilities and all those sort of things, or what else might be in that infinite potential vista of your potential and mine and all that sort of stuff. And then us as individuals in this society, in this time and stuff like that, how to navigate and appreciate and comprehend what's going on when it doesn't really add up and all that sort of stuff. So me coming to this and being public and all that sort of stuff, it's been a long path and very reluctant one, but I do really appreciate it and the privileged space it has to be able to share my concepts now, because like I've really loved getting into spirituality and being willing to, you know, go against the grain, so to speak, of accepting data, which society labels people as, and because it wants to keep people in fear of being labelled and all that sort of stuff. And when you go beyond it, it doesn't matter and all that sort of stuff. So it's been a while since I've done a video and all that. There's been a fair bit going on and all that sort of stuff, and not every experience is good, but what I've tried to instill, and this is what I take on for myself as well, is experience is the key to wisdom, right? And going through experiences, particularly not the best ones, there's probably a lot of data that you gained and all that sort of stuff. So I've gone through a lot that have sort of outcomes that aren't ideally the greatest that most people would seek out and stuff, but what I've always had is those reference of all the data points of everything and stuff, and maybe in that time I don't have the context, and then over time I get the data and all that sort of stuff. And I think you as an individual, you do that instinctively without knowing and all that sort of stuff. And I talk about the inactive versus active mode and stuff like that. So I think if you're here with me, then you're probably very similar to me in many respects. What I've been able to do is self-generate the active mode, you know, versus passive mode. That's what it is. I was looking for the words passive versus active. So what I'm trying to inspire you ultimately is to activate the active mode of all of these things that say I've worked out, that you don't have to actually go through all the experiences to impart them the way I do, to engage them in an active mode, so they're in you, and you might not know you're actually engaging them and stuff, but it's just the genius of not needing to know the data. It's just the outcome sort of thing, of the awareness outcome. And another thing I've tried to also do is instill a very dense, concentrated volume of high-level data, that you actually have a foundation of concepts. And it's all cool if you don't agree with stuff I say and all that sort of stuff. You might not agree with it now, but then after you go through some experience, it's like, oh, I wish I listened to that brat 5 years ago sort of thing. But I think, like, again, what I've instilled is have the data there and not be in a judgmental mode. And judgment is like, say, if, you know, I'm not saying you, but other people, they might judge you and stuff. And what judgment is seeing the invalid in yourself in a reflection. And another thing sort of I've instilled is be in observer mode all the time, because, and I love being in judgment because I'm looking for the wrong in myself all the time and stuff like that, but me personally, I don't do it anymore. There's no point. A bit like the emotional mastery, there's just a lot of emotional states that aren't worth going into and stuff like that. So I've gained a lot of data over these last several months, and the last couple of releases have been really big, and I'll refer to them. And also going back to my Amplify the Echoes 15 and 16, where I offered a lot of concepts in there, particularly about thoroughness and the DNA stuff in us that's been seeded in us and all that sort of stuff. And then I've released my Infinite Potential Sovereignty Declaration version 5, which to me, in my journey, it feels like a masterpiece that I've offered, right? And by getting all that down, I've given you a reference of a lot of what I'm going to talk about, because the way I operate is I assume you've gone through it, right? And I've always instilled thoroughness is the characteristic that I appreciate the most now, right? And I've offered about going and watching the Michael Jordan The Last Dance documentary on Netflix, and just seeing, despite his talents, he was always thorough, right? And going back to our Intuitive Potential Part 1, I offered this author by the name of Malcolm Gladwell, and he had a book called Blink that he released that was one of the first books I ever got into, but he had another one called Outliers, and he offered Outliers a, Michael Jordan level sort of being, and they've always got the talent, alright, but the key to the masters out there is they've done 10,000 hours of work, right, to be a master at their craft. And it's not work, it's passion, it's love and stuff like that. But the consistent thing he found when he was examining all these masters of their craft of whatever they're in, that there was no shortcuts. They did all the hard work, and they made it look easy because they'd worked at it that much. So what I've offered is instilling thoroughness is your greatest ally right now, sort of thing. It's not a superpower, it's just dedication and work ethic, right? Because the multi-dimensional intuitive talents in this world are a bit like the Wild West, a bit like Westworld if you've seen that. There's no conformity, there's individuals out there and stuff, and there's a lot of teachings that are offered that, in my opinion, they're more like I'll bite my tongue for now on that, but they don't do what they say, and they're more likely to train you into something that you don't want to be involved in, and give your sovereignty away and give portals and all this sort of stuff, right? And we've never had a reference of what is going on. It's more like being on an explorer and trying to find new territory, new country sort of thing, discovering new worlds and all that. And the lawlessness that goes on sort of thing. And the gap and the vulnerability, and a lot of us have gone through a lot of stuff, and there's a lot of characteristics that might be instilled in us, like lack of self-worth and inadequacy and all these sort of things. And there's a very fine line between being humble and lack, right? Like being humble like the dust, there's people out there that are better than you and sort of thing. And one of the big things I sort of defined about myself was my principles of existence back in 2014. And the very first one I have in that is, how am I wrong in this moment? Because if you assume you're right, then that's the potential for gaps and stuff like that. So, and that's where my journey has taken so long to get here, because I've been humble. There's many people out there with talents and stuff that seem to be superior to, say, myself and all that, and I've gladly defaulted perception authority in this reality to others that perceive to be superior and stuff like that, and appreciate that the humbleness and the lack, and potentially I've had lack and stuff like that, and taken on data, because who am I to question this sort of thing? But in myself I've had a visceral reaction to stuff, but I haven't honored my own sense and things like that. So I just say this about myself because it's potential pattern that you're going through and you've been through, and honestly, if you're here, you're on the other side of certain stuff, right? And we're coming to some crescendo of putting a lot of streams of things together to find the what is actually going on and form that consensus foundation of truth and to be able to launch from and stuff. And that's where I just feel, in spite of everything and all I've been through, I feel incredibly empowered and honored to be here right now, right? To be able to offer this and maybe there's a few of you out there that actually take on what I say, and you know, going back many years, that was terrifying that someone would actually listen to me and stuff. It's like, wow. But I've had to do this in a public way for myself, ideally help you to go through those, you know, stepping up growing pains that you might have a perception that's such a like encryption code decoder of all the crap and stuff. It might be just the thing that unlocks everything and cascades everything, like the conscious Tetris image that I show, and I'll get into my images and stuff. And it's I've been processing a lot and been through a lot in these last few weeks and these last couple months, particularly after putting, you know, my version 5 out of the Sovereignty Declaration, and that month that I took off, and the region of the world that I was really focused on in that month that I offered in Galactic Special Forces Part 38, which I'm going to be a bit elusive about. I'm just going to refer to that video to go and watch regions of the world, because I've very much been focused on them and what's underneath them and stuff. And then the last release about the multidimensional internet apparatus, and I really want to instill that word apparatus versus matrix. It's very important that you get that, you leave that matrix sort of assumed concept sort of thing behind. To me, an apparatus is all the variables combined in the structures going on sort of thing. And I'm going to offer sort of words like that to have a reference for and go beyond, a bit like my spirituality and purity. And another one will be synchronicity and serendipity, all right? But this video, what I'm getting to and what I'm just, the crescendo of where I am at the moment, and being able to just get the mechanics of things and having to dip my toe into experiences and getting all the data and pulling it all together to ideally offer you a version of the truth that has never been offered before, to help you go beyond and take you to a level that you wouldn't even know was possible. And the responsibility I've sort of taken on by being this is like to even give you concepts to think differently about things. Like I said about the synchronicity and the serendipity, right? Because I got I'm struggling to get it out. I've got the synchronicity mechanics of how that works, all right? And to me, synchronicity is like, you know, people think, oh, the time and all this, it's on my side. It's like like the system saying it's got you. That's what it is, all right? And that's where I'm getting to, like, going back to influences part 4, part 7. The last few videos, particularly the internet apparatus, which I've said is a whole influence sort of theme that I need to do as a separate whole concept. And so part 1 was the last one I released, which I highly recommend, and it's going to build to more. But this is going to be influences parts 8, all right, 8. And what I got, like going through the videos that were included in the internet apparatus relative to Elizabeth Clare Prophet and Anthony Sutton, which was amazing for those guys back in 1987 talking about that. In going through that video, which is the main component of that one, which is talks all about the Cold War and the setup for the technology transfers and all that sort of stuff, and all the societies molding everything going back the last 100 years to set us all up, right? I heard the language that she offered in that was raise your vibration, all right? And there's just so many concepts like that that people listen to and they repeat, all right? And they just regurgitate thinking that's accurate. But this, I've had this clip that I found about AshayanaDeane from February 2023, and I offered one of the videos around then and stuff, but it was actually her outing the raise the vibration of how damaging that is. And it's more about, if you raise your vibration with frequency, it actually sort of messes you up, right? And you want to focus on your oscillation with frequency, right? And so to me, like the thoroughness, the definition of thoroughness, like there's 1600 hours of Ashayana stuff, right? Roughly ballpark, right? And to find this little clip buried in one thing from 2002 that was very even hard to get, it was almost impossible to get, right? One of my clients actually helped me get it, right? It's just that relentless thoroughness to find that nuggets, right? To be able to offer the solution relative to a false teaching out there that so many people accept. And the reason why I just bring that up now, because I've got clips about it and I want to show it. This video I was gonna do a little one about that because I think that concept is so freaking viral in the spiritual community and so many people embrace it and they think it's truth, and it's just like crazy, right? So, but then I was going to do a short clip and then I just expanded like the Akashic records. I've said the Akashic Bullshitter records because it's just a giant file that's been downloaded onto Earth, and because we're being wiped, right? We've had a void in our DNA and our data and stuff, and the stuff has been picked up by us, by organic or influential sort of mechanics that it's been instilled in us. So we've got all this corrupt history that's not even relevant to Earth in us. And so it's years of experience being immersed in the Akashic record that I can appreciate that, right? And I have the reference of all that experience to be able to be the variable I am now to call that stuff out, right? So they're concepts in the spiritual community that are blindly accepted. Like I hear people on Joe Rogan and I go through YouTube like shorts and just see what's out there, and there's these experts that portray themselves in a like very charismatic way that, oh, this guy must know what they're talking about, and I have to accept that. I can't validate it and all that, but it's a concept that must be, it seems so superior, so I'm inferior to all this stuff, so I got to accept that and all this sort of stuff, right? And no one's gone against the stream to even offer the mechanics of what it is, to not even listen to it. But what I want to do is offer this as a reference, and you might not agree and you might hate me and all this sort of shit, and I'm going to be bright in this as well, right? But ideally, the conclusion you come to is like, I'm being brave calling this shit out, and it's at least a reference for you to even contemplate this and process it. And you don't have to agree with me and all that, that's cool, but you might go through your own eras of discernment and then it'll come back as like, oh yeah, he was right. And it doesn't matter if you get that in the future and all that. To me, it's like, it doesn't matter whether you think I'm right or not. If you get that concept, and it might be at a very critical moment at some point in your future, and you just, instead of saying yes, you go no, and the context is there, sort of thing. And it helps you at some point to not accept shit, to allow it to be instilled in you, because a lot of stuff goes on that, even just like language. And if you've gone through my sovereignty declaration, the tone section, which calls out all the languages, right? That like English has been seeded by Anunnaki, right? So even if you're listening to someone and they say, open your heart, you might not think you're doing it, but you've got the tech in you, the corrupt DNA that actually does it, right? And I've worked out like possession, right? Like possession on one level comes from your heart, and you get possessed by your heart. And then there's like, you imagine like your heart's like, goes in, imagine your side on, right, and your heart's like this. There's like a layer that's obfuscating a deeper corruption that you don't even know there's corruption in your heart tech, right? And you think because you've been corrupted and you've been blinded and you've got back doors that you don't even know the depth of like gangrene sort of shit in your heart that allows all that stuff. And so the appreciation of the language that, you know, if you haven't declared sovereignty, it still works through your DNA and all this sort of stuff, right? And you might hear, there's a lot of like, open up to synchronicities and open to the greater universe. I don't know the exact language, but if you hear like, they say it in a tone and it wants you to open up to a greater source of stuff, to me that's the apparatus. It's the Internet of Bodies stuff, right? And spirituality is so rife with all this stuff. Like going back to like channeling and stuff like that. To me, all that is the apparatus, right? Accepting guides and all this sort of stuff. So I just feel like we've got to come to this point. Like this video, what I'm going to name it is Raise Your Vibration, Akashic Records, and spirituality itself. I think it's time we need to draw a line on spirituality of it being quite corrupted, let alone damaging. And that's where I got the synchronicity, is that synchronicity hooks you into the apparatus of the spirituality, where if you go into purity, there's like a gatekeeper for that, you know. And if you're wanting like materialism and conformity, or, you know, collectivism and all that sort of stuff, it's you as an individual that has, you know, inferiority complexes. You don't have the self-confidence yet and all this sort of stuff, and you want to be accepted by others, and there's this whole collective thing in society. And so you might be on the verge of going to purity, but it snaps you back into the spirituality, and then it links you up to all this stuff and just keeps you locked in that quagmire of stuff. So I've said a lot up front, but I want to give a lot of context for this. So I want to get into that now, if that makes sense. So I hope that's a good intro. I don't know how much light I've got, so I'm going to get into it, right? And in this video, like, I'm dropping a lot of these concepts, right, to ideally allow you to have a variable to actually observe them, right? To actually step outside them and question them, and just being even willing to do that and discern all these variables. And then you might see that actually Andre's right, like some of these things haven't been right. I just feel like it's very interesting. Like, I might show the video now, because you might go through an awakening, right? And then you go into spirituality and there's all this wonder. It's like a bit of a honeymoon sort of thing. And then a lot of you that might be here, you've been in the trenches for a long time. There might be some new people and all that. It's not a judgment thing. But I've got a really funny video, and it's a bit it's a bit, I'll surprise you, right? So you imagine you've gone through your awakening, and then you go into spirituality. A lot of us are coming out the other end of spirituality to go into purity. I'll just show you the spiritual no man's land image quick, right? So I've got these in my sovereignty declaration and that. What I just want to offer is, to me, like, spirituality needs to be discerned, whether it's actually something good to be aligned with. And I'm offering the purity concept. It's something I've offered. It's my own and stuff like that. But to me, it's not about being perfect, all right? It's doing your best. And it's not about, say, you putting me on a pedestal. I've got to be pure 100% and all that. Purity is an individual journey, all right? And the thing ultimately is when we're all intuitive, you can see through everyone's bullshit. Does that make sense? But then you get to the level of really high level, and most people haven't been challenged at the high level, and all their corruptions are exposed when they've never had to work hard. And that's where the thoroughness comes in. If you think you're inferior to others that have awareness, don't worry. Like, to me, thoroughness these days is like a superpower, alright? And so you focus on yourself, you're doing the best. And the idea is that if everything was organic, like would attract like, and gravitation to other pure sort of aligned beings doing the best. A bit like me, like, I've been tough on my mechanics, but energy exchange value sort of thing, I've instilled those values. Like, it's very demanding doing healings and like having boundaries and all those sort of things. When people respect them and do the right thing, it's fascinating where I take people. But being a practitioner in this world, being against all this stuff and taking everyone through, you imagine what comes at me and all that sort of stuff. So when the variables aren't respected, then there's consequence on me. And again, it's all experience is the key to wisdom, and that's where I'm offering how I operate as a template for others to take on board without having to go through these things. You might not have the context of why, but then you go through it and then you realize. But the idea is for me to help people accelerate through this as fast as possible, because we need to really get on it, right? But what I'm just offering is the spiritual no man's land, all right? And to get the other side. And I've offered this, my intuitive potential series and all that sort of stuff. But it's not a judgment or anything like that. It's about where you have the potential in you to go. And to me, a lot of the beings out there, they're invaders. They're not actually aligned to our benefit. They're actually there to and very supported to get into positions of awareness, authority and stuff like that to keep us in the spiritual no man's land, because they can't go beyond it, right? So I'll just move on. And say myself, this is what I am attempting to help you to get through, right? And it's not easy and all that sort of stuff. There's all sorts of stuff that goes on. It's not, you know, you might go forward and you get hit and you get back and all this sort of stuff, right? But ideally, I'm offering an awareness destination. It's not like a destination in life. The journey is the part, right? And the thoroughness always is the key. Like you might get to where you think you're pure, aligned to purity, and you've done all the work, and then you get complacent, you get hacked and all this sort of stuff. Because you go through the sovereignty declaration, see how much is there, alright? I'm just going to move on quick because it's getting dark already, alright? This is the conscious Tetris image, right? And the red squares that you might accept as truth might be corrupt relative to a lot of the variables I've said in this, alright? Maybe you've accepted truths from synchronicities that are because all that program works and you think you've got to accept it, alright? But what if it's the corruption that set you up for limiting your awareness, right? So a lot of these things, it's brave to contemplate and discern and all that, but ideally it's about accessing next levels and stuff, right? So that what I've tried to do on one variable, the three main things is offer a lot of data to instill into your body, so you have a reference and a foundation, the energy hygiene and the sovereignty sort of stuff, right? So what I've tried to do is condense the data into a very dense format and concepts and stuff relative to truth to help you launch, right? So yeah, it's just conscious Tetris is relentless, right? So ideally acquiring the data to have a foundation, to have a reference for what is the truth is the key, right? Because then it's acquiring the data, have pattern recognition to see what's going on. And if you have no context and you don't know what is good and bad and stuff like that, and then ideally, if you acquire all these concepts and are able to discern and appreciate sort of what I've offered and maybe you've gained elsewhere and stuff, then you can sense the truth versus the falsehood sort of stuff, right? This is an image relative to how our perceptions can be corrupted very easily and you don't even know it, alright? So if you accept sort of concepts out there as gospel when they're actually false, right? You don't know what back doors are being instilled into you via the data. Like I said about the body and the language, right? You go through the Sovereignty Declaration version 5, the complete one, and see how much has been done to us and how much we've been up against without knowing it. How amazing we are for that, right? But ideally how empowered we are with knowing that context, right? And so this is why I say thoroughness is the key, because you can have blind spots and you don't even know it. And that's where, say, I've created the healing modalities that I've created that are so easy, but it's just like vigilance and consistency. And like I said about the Michael Jordan Last Dance, right? That's where I was saying awareness, they can be corrupt, right? I was just waiting for a little bit of an interruption, so I hurried that. What I'm offering is, as I said earlier, you know, you might be an individual that has very high level awareness, and that's, I'm not being negative towards that. I would just offer, there's a vulnerability relative to being complacent because you think you have an awareness edge, right? And you aren't discerning at the level that you need to have very, like the full vista, right? The backdoor sort of stuff, like I said about the DNA codes in our body, right? That by design have been corrupted throughout the lineages through so much, right? Like the wipings and all that sort of stuff. And I don't really want to get into the bigger, broader stuff of what I've offered in the past. But there's a highly likelihood that, you know, if you're corrupt, how would you know if you're corrupt, right? So I just want to instill, no matter where you are, like, and you guys out there that think you're inferior to others, and like being highly aware sucks, alright? You imagine the whole vista of the multi-dimensional. It's very hard to cover all the angles, alright? It's not an advantage, it can be a disadvantage to be overwhelmed and stuff. And I've actually had in the last few weeks like that turning up abilities to get overwhelmed and getting oversensed and stuff like that, because I was obviously going to do this and piss a lot off, right? And I know exactly where it was from. That's why I'm talking about certain things, right? Again, it comes to this where, like, going beyond spirituality to purity, right? And so just think about, like, you guys with a work ethic, you have an edge, right? And the thing is, like, this is what happens a lot, right? Because people are so milked with life force, they're vulnerable, so their body is armed up, they don't have the energy they can afford to lose, and it can be a defensive thing to not allow help and all that sort of stuff, because most people are being smashed, right? If you're actually aligned to the potential of purity, which is something I offer, which goes against a lot of the corrupt out there sort of stuff, then you're probably been through it and targeted and all that sort of stuff. And, you know, when you're vulnerable, disarming to allow help in is tough, right? But I would just offer, acquire the data and see what happens to your body when you go through the sovereignty declaration and stuff. But like I was saying about a lot of the language in the spirituality, it's actually there by these repeated concepts like raise your vibration and all that sort of stuff to actually work with the corruption in your DNA tech to actually not allow your conscious awareness to be in control, alright? So just as amazing as our body tech is, it's a bit like when I do healings and stuff, I tell people I'm working with the conscious awareness of the body, a bit like the Doctor Strange cape, alright? You could say I might offer you a concept, and it's not so much I'm gauging your consciousness reaction to it. It's as soon as you process that data, the body like engages with it, whether or not you're aware of it, right? And I'm having this dialogue with the body of all the corruptions. It's like, brrr, you know what I mean? Like, it's the body's just going, Andre, please fucking get this shit out of me. You know what I mean? So I'm just inviting that partnership with your body, all right? And realize there may be stuff going on that you're not in control of. And that's why I've offered so much in the Sovereignty Declaration, particularly version 5, to actually eliminate all this stuff, right? And that's where you might be polarized to it, because it's like something has rule over you that doesn't want you to be free of their control and their corruption of you to use you as a weapon, let alone a DNA harvest, Kundalini life force source for them and all that sort of stuff, right? So it's very important you appreciate the weaponization in language and the relationship to the body, right? And that's why so many of these concepts are repeated and supported and all that, because they don't want you to gain your purity and be superior to them and get beyond them, and then actually be an awareness threat in this reality to all the bullshit going on. So I hope that helps, all right? I'm going to move on, all right? So I mentioned going through the Elizabeth Clare Prophet stuff with Anthony Sutton, all right? And it's more so like taking the data points away. It's not like right or wrong, like because she says this, she's wrong. I still feel she's a phenomenal facilitator, as I said in the last video, the multi-dimensional internet apparatus, right? Where I offered a big component of theirs, right? But going through that, I found she talked about raising a vibration as a solution and stuff, and I was like, holy shit. But to me, it's like a cool reference, right, that I can offer here, and you hear it, and you hear the language and what it does to your body and all this, all right? But you measure yourself in the past when you heard this concept, or seen it in like Telegram memes and stuff like that. Like, how many people repeat this crap, right? And how damaging it is with the context I offer you. And then ideally you have a reference of how you were in the past of accepting it, and now you've got this reference of the falsehood. Ideally you'll get instilled with this, so whenever you hear the bullshit out there, a bit like me, you know it. You trust your body's reaction to it. Your body's going, hell no. You know? I'm just trying to get this through this quick, right? So what I've got is 2 clips. I've got a clip of Anthony with Elizabeth where they talk about some stuff, but I've got this component of raise your vibration in it. And then I've got another component with Asha, which I'll offer after. All right, so I'm going to offer the Anthony Elizabeth clip now, and I'll see you on the other side. All right.
Well, if you look at Washington, you go into Washington, it's like a world apart. And you go through all, like we did earlier, do we explain these things by stupidity, by ignorance? And you're almost left up by default with this behavioristic manipulation. It's the only one that really fits. I mean, these people are so out of touch with reality, as I see it, and as you see it, that this really becomes the only explanation that will hold water.
Well, when you have a few people that are not in any way influenced by it and take their stand for reality, for truth, for common sense, do these people have a natural repellent of these kind of energy waves? Is it the strength of God within them, or what is it that keeps some people totally clear in their thinking?
Well, as I've tried to say today, I've always explained it, my position on the basis I'm just thick-headed and rather slow. I don't see things the same way as other people. But I think there's got to be an inner force, and a spiritual power, which enables us, perhaps gives us an inner strength to see truth, to see things as they really are. And these people, as you mentioned, don't have this inner strength, this inner power, this inner reflection of God.
The people that succumb.
People are doing these things.
The people projecting the waves and those that are receptive to them.
Yes, both sides.
Both sides. And when you look at the people who are receptive and who tout this line, they seem to have had the capacity for vulnerability to this before they came under that attack. Like Schultz, for instance.
Yes. A vulnerability.
Yeah, like Schultz. I mean, you could say he's a victim of ELF waves, but Schultz was Schultz before he was a victim of ELF waves, is what I'm saying.
Yes, it's whether the Soviets manipulated his psychological weaknesses or the ELF waves brought them about. But the kind of person you get in Washington, a person who searches for power, you can guarantee that 95% of the people in Washington have got this lack of inner strength, as you mentioned earlier.
You know, if it's been observed by top people in Washington that the attrition rate on the part of people visiting the Soviet Union and then coming back and being soft on communism is amazing. In fact, they can go to the Soviet Union and be totally turned around in their views and become pro-Soviet. Do you think that therefore there is a greater effect of this mind manipulation in Soviet territory at closer range?
You're getting this with the businessmen. These top businessmen go to the Soviet Union and they come back. Dwayne Andrews is a very good example. He's chairman of Archer Daniels Midland. They come back from the Soviet Union and they may as well be reading a translation of Pravda when they come back. It's the straight party line, right the way down. Now, they weren't always like that. But they do go visit Moscow and they come back and they gradually get into this party line business. What is very disturbing with a man like Dwayne Andrews is he is a very big financial contributor to people like Sandra Dole. He backed Hubert Humphrey for many years. But you do get this phenomenon, not so much with diplomats, but you certainly get it with businessmen. They go there, they're wined and dined. I suspect they get this psychological manipulation. And they come back, and then they parrot the party line. When you challenge them, they become confused and hostile.
That's a real telltale sign, isn't it?
Real telltale sign.
The hostility is a front because there's no reason behind it.
That's right.
It's a bluster.
It's bluster. And I've seen that at first hand. They become very antagonistic.
I've seen it too.
Yes. Which is weakness. There's nothing behind it. They're confused themselves why they're saying this and why they're doing this.
And then they fear the reality they're being told because somehow their inner mechanism is repolarized around something else. I don't think there's any defense against psychotronics except to raise one's vibration. And that's why I made the album The Only Way to Go Is Up. You have to go up in vibration to escape psychotronics because they can only hit at a certain level.
Well, theoretically, if you transmit on another frequency to counterbalance the destructive frequency, it's like anti-noise, will eliminate noise. I have the circuit diagrams for an instrument which the West Germans are using.
You said you were going to bring us a set that they got left home, right?
The circuit diagram, yes, I forgot to bring it. But I will make it available to you. Apparently it protects you for about 3 feet, radius of 3 feet.
And what does this protection accomplish?
Well, it neutralizes the destructive frequency.
And
so if they're beaming 11 hertz at you, it will neutralize, you adjust your instrument to neutralize 11 hertz, which would create the riot. 11 hertz would create the riot here.
And if you know how, and if you have the diagrams, you can build this.
Oh yes, I've got the circuit diagrams. You cannot import them into the United States. The Food and Drug Administration,
Food and drug?
in its wisdom, thinks you shouldn't have them. But you can call it anything you want to. You can call it a toy and still manufacture it.
Can you create disease and abnormalities in cells and cell function?
Yes.
By these waves?
You can create disease with waves.
You know, the Soviets are very vociferous about accusing us of having created AIDS. Does that tell you anything about the Soviets?
Yes, a guilty conscience. Well, a guilty something. Yeah, I'm quite convinced they're using both psychotronic warfare and weather warfare.
Now, to neutralize the energy and also to capture this, this universal energy that is all around is going to make a big difference.
Yes.
In life. I'd like you to sum up and tell the camera what you'd like to tell the American people as a result of your research. What are the most important steps to take? What action can we take now that we have this awareness?
You mean assuming that people are aware of what's going on?
Well, let's take this group. These people are from all over the world and the United States, and they're very aware and they're action-oriented. They want to take action based on their awareness.
Oh, well, yes, I think my words would be quite clear to take back specific messages from here and talk, and convert and make people aware of what you know and what you believe in.
Once people become aware from your standpoint and what you know, what is the action to take to turn things around?
First of all, you have to get numbers, large numbers of people aware. And then, I don't know, it depends. If we're in the middle of chaos, then all we can do is just retreat into the forest. But if we're still as we are today with a certain amount of political activity, I suppose one could go the congressional route, although that seems pretty hopeless. Political activity seems to be less and less likely as a solution as we go along. It may be that we may have to just live through the cataclysm, the chaos, and emerge at the other side.
Be survivors.
Be survivors. Learn to be a survivor. I think it may well come down to that. Too many people, particularly in the big cities, as long as they get their payroll check or the welfare check, as long as that arrives on a specific day each month, they're not thinking beyond that particular day. That's the danger. People are unwilling to look at bad news and act on the basis of bad news.
Hey, welcome back. Thanks for being here. I hope you got a lot from that, and I hope you heard those linguistics that she offered, all right? And it's not to diminish anyone or anything. It's more about take the components that are like gold nuggets and let all the dirt filter through sort of stuff, right? So I don't want you to dismiss anyone because I say this. It's just like listen to all the variables and take away what is truth to you, rather than like dismissing, like being black and white. But it also have to have the discernment up a whole nother level, right? So what I'm going to do is offer the Asher clip that I found 2.5 years ago. And like I said, it was very buried. It was like in the 1600 hours. It was very hard to find. But it was that thoroughness that I said was the key. Like thoroughness has always been an aspect of, you do the hard work early and it makes the other side very easy. So to me it was very rewarding and a confirmation of my thoroughness to actually find this. And then I had talked about it back then, but it even in my journey it's been quite buried and stuff. So I want to offer that in this influences relative to raise your vibration, Akashic record, and spirituality itself, sort of influence, because just imagine how many other concepts are out there that I haven't talked about yet that are weaponized like this. So I want to offer you this. It's about 3 minutes of Ash talking about raise your vibration versus raise your oscillation and frequency, of how damaging raise your vibration is, all right? So I'll offer that here. Enjoy.
We are made right now, as we sit here, our bodies are made of templates of vibration, of energy, consciousness units that do two things. First, they stand still, and that still point then replicates its still point and goes into vibration and oscillation simultaneously in a syncopated rhythm. So if you just went into vibration and oscillation all at the same time without having a difference in the rhythm of how those vibrations and oscillations were occurring, you'd disappear and turn back into the man-owl again. You would literally demanifest yourself. So there's a syncopated action between the vibration and oscillation in your body. Now, vibration and oscillation can be understood quite simply if you think of what I talked about yesterday, which are scalar standing wave points. Little waves, right? Like a little flashlight. Picture one of them, a little flashlight. Now, when the flashlight is turned on, and the light comes on, the little flame comes on, like we talked about the flames in your field, that is an oscillation. And it oscillates and transmits light or energy. When it is when that standing wave contracts and goes back into itself toward its own original point of creation, it goes into vibration. Vibration is internal movement, where oscillation is external movement. Projecting outward movement is oscillation. Drawing inward movement is vibration. So there's a big difference. When you look at things in the New Age movement, they say a lot, you want to raise the frequency, or you want to raise your frequency, raise your vibration. They are two conflicting statements. To raise your frequency, you need to raise your oscillation and lower your vibration. So there's tricks that are being done here, literally with language, of how we're being taught through some veins, ascension mechanics and things. We're being taught to, you want to ascend, go higher in frequency, raise your vibration. If you know that vibration is the internal holding, you know that you don't want to raise the vibration. You want to raise the oscillation. So there's all these little tricks of consciousness that are taking place on the planet. We can sidestep a lot of them if we begin to understand this basic structure. Part of Chi, part of K, part of Cum. What these form are the standing scalar waves that I have talked about. They are a fixed point, a still point, the first point of attention. Imagine grids made out of these, okay, like massive fields of, first of all, points of attention. And those still points of attention then phase and replicate themselves and form a point of oscillation and vibration. A point of what at first, the part of Chi and part of K and part of Cum point, which would be points of pre-light and pre-sound. That's before it's out here fully and manifest. So these are the places where light and sound come from. Part of Cum, carrier of the E-ray, carrier of vibration, that is the vibration current, that's the vibration phase of a part of Chi unit, is the pre-sound vibration. So sound and vibration are associated with each other, whereas the carrier of the Mane, which is the part of K, is associated with oscillation, or the projecting outward of energy. This goes back to what I had explained about the gender issues, where male bodies are a bit better at transmitting frequency outward. That would mean they have a bit more of the Parta K phase. Their bodies are built on a template that has more Parta K units than Parta Cum units. Females will be built on more Parta Cum units. And they're in balance. We each have both, but there would be more. A male form would require, to make it a male form, where it wouldn't be genderless, requires it would have more of one than the other. It would need more of the carriers of the Mane force, which are the Parta K units, which means it can transmit energy a little bit stronger than it pulls energy. And females would be the opposite. They have more Parta Cum. Their templates are made out of more Parta Cum units of consciousness, which means females are the carriers of the Ire. We both have both consciousness, all of the three of them in us. But females carry the Ire consciousness, males carry the Mane, and we all carry all three of them. So these things that we talk about, they seem kind of out there and far away. Divine Trinity somewhere up there, out there, through there, and somewhere in there we have these little units of scalar wave things, Parta K, and Parta Cum. All of these things can be seen in literally the formation of our bodies, in how our bodies carry energy, right down to our genders. All of this stuff goes right into literally cell division. When conception occurs, it affects the entire way cells form and become one thing in a womb instead of another thing. So these things are the intricate and integral portions of what our life is about. We look at birth and death and the stuff that happens in between, and kind of a lot of us kind of scratch our heads. Well, yeah, we got here somehow, and we're going to leave and go somewhere. But hopefully, in the meantime, you do the best you can with what you have, which you don't really know much about anyway. It appears to be an external world coming at you from outside that you don't know what to do with. It's survival of the fittest. You're lucky if you can just survive and have a relatively peaceful life where you don't have horrible, things happening to you. When we begin to understand this stuff, this is called template science. It is divine template science. We begin to understand this. We begin to understand where our power lives. Our power lives with God, with the part of ourselves that carries the God consciousness, that knows these things and knows how to work our conscious thoughts in relation to them.
Welcome back. Thank you for being here. Interesting. Hey, raise your vibration. Just think about how many times you've seen it and all that. And just remember what I said about the body. Like, the body tech has the corruptions built into it. So even if you are denying it, you're not clear in your DNA sort of stuff, right? It can be working like as a code, like a backdoor code sort of thing. And all these people out there, whether they know it or not, there's a lot of beings that are highly aware that know exactly what they're doing, right? So I'm just going to move on quick, all right? I'm going to go to the Akashic Records because I want to put that in this, all right? So I've shared these images a few times, and it's a lot in my Amplify the Echo series, but what I found out working, like the variables of the Asha really helped, that the Akashic Record is just a giant file that's uploaded to the Earth radio body, and then it percolates through to our individual radio bodies, all right? And what there was, and it's still in place, I feel, it gets rearmed and reanimated and stuff. And so it goes back to like the lack of sovereignty to me, that people can, it's the difference between spirituality and purity, right? To me, the Akashic Record is an aspect of the spiritual apparatus that is not there for our betterment, right? It's an overlay over purity to hijack us and all sorts of stuff. So just like even contemplating that a giant file can be downloaded onto a planet that we all, because we're being wiped and we've got this vulnerability and it's been instilled into the radio bodies of us and stuff, that it can percolate down through into us and all the lineages and all the trauma and all that sort of stuff, right? It's very hard to contemplate that the influences can work at the scale, which is far beyond what most of our society accepts, sort of stuff. It doesn't mean it's not in place. Does that make sense? So I've just got another image I want to show.
The history here is a riot, but it's also sad. And what's really sad is the little bit of it that has come down through what we call the Bible, and there's some little bits of it in the Koran and those kind of things. There's little bits here and there. But We get into the Atlantean conspiracy. I'm going to run down, we've mentioned some of these events as went through the first part of that. This is going back a little bit further. Now, some of the Atlantean history is in Voyagers, Volume 2 as well, where it tells how Atlantis was first a large continent, and then certain things were done with the Illuminati races that created major implosions of their massive crystal pylon technologies. That ended up sinking portions of the land and literally sucking part of it down in the Phantom Matrix. Well, the reason I can't find a lot of it, like where is that continent? Because literally it demanifested through the grids and was pulled into the black hole system. So they're going to have a hard time finding all of Atlantis because part of it's down there. Now, Atlantis turned into an island community, large islands, and they were Lojas up in the northeast. There was Brua, Atlantis, down in the south, a little bit west, and there was Nohasa. The whole Noah story came out of Nohasa, Atlantis, and the Illuminati race lines that were coming out of there. When we get into this history, we start to find out what the Exodus was about in the Bible. And you know what's so sad? This is one of the things that I just feel so bad for the Jewish people, because they have been conned into believing that was them. It wasn't even a Jewish Exodus. It was the Hyksos, Knights Templar, Illuminati, Leviathan races that were getting kicked out of Egypt by a competing force of draconian Illuminati races. The history here has been so twisted. So we're going to start to unravel that twist, because these twists are in our memory banks on a race level, which means they're in our DNA as twisted codes. They're also in our radial bodies. The radial body is a part of our 15-dimensional anatomy that, you know how we've talked about Huva bodies, those, circles of energy around us, the three-dimensional egg-shaped spheres of energy around us. Well, around each one of those, there's something called a radial body. The radial body is created, it is formed of what are called muons and trion units. They are pre-light, pre-sound units. The radial body becomes very important. Planets have them too, universes have them, harmonic universes. The radial bodies hold the memory imprint of a person or a species or a planet. The distortions that we have now in our DNA template, thanks to the planetary grids, have totally distorted the natural pictures, memory pictures, the digital coding that would give us our natural memory. That's why we don't remember any of it, and they've progressively been recoding it to match Nibiruan memory. So by the time we got in here, they got back in here, we would simply look at them and know them as if they were our creator gods. So this whole thing comes back to, if we learn this history, we see what's being done, we can unravel what was done. We can unravel it in our minds, but also in our gene codes, which means we're going to heal our radial bodies through bringing these frequencies of the true history records in. It'll help to heal the memory twists and the blank spots that are in our radial bodies. By doing that, we'll be able to run more frequency. And when we can understand what has been done here, that's the only way we're going to understand how we can fix it. How is a round table going to fix all this mess, and how is all this mess related to, the pieces of it? How are they related? So we're going to find out about that as we progress through the history. We'll go from the history into the technologies that we're used to do this, and into what we can do to begin the process of healing it. Now, what's interesting is
and the reason why I want to show you this one is that there's a grid over Earth, but then Earth has been trapped inside of it, right? And she's been messed with. It's only been in the last couple of years that we've chipped away and worked at this, and I heal Earth herself, like in my Earth pranics. I'm doing the Earth Soul and Earth Surface, and I'm also doing Pure Source as well, right? So I have a lot of experience on these levels, and I've been in the trenches more than anyone else, and I think we need to be willing to appreciate that this all shows how much the apparatus has been at play that just never allow us to get free, right? And a lot is playing out to give data variables to show it at the moment, right? But I'm just very rare in all this, and I'm being experienced with it at a level that very few have. So it's not a negative thing. It's like, why isn't humanity achieving our potential with all the stuff that's been offered over the last 30, 40 years in spirituality, right? It's because it's all been part of the apparatus system to actually hook us into that, right? It's all been working in partnership, and it's only just like Sabrina Wallace and her stuff that she's offered that's really helped me with the Internet of Thoughts and bodies and all that sort of stuff that I've put into my sovereignty declaration, right? So it's dark, I'm sorry about that. So it's dark, I only just made it. I was going to show a video, alright? And I was talking about the like going from 3D 5 sense to the spiritual journey to the purity, right? And this video I'm going to show, it's quite funny, right? It's a bit gross, but it sums up what it's like from going in awakening into the spiritual journey, and then you work all this crap out, right? So I'm just going to offer the video here at the end, and it's a bit of a metaphor of, say me, I've eaten so much of this crap, right? So I hope you laugh and you appreciate it, and I'll just say bye on the other side, alright?
You look beautiful. Happy anniversary. Ready for a big night on the town?
But before we go, I have something for you.
So do I. It's right here. But I'm saving it for later.
Mine's on the porch, and you can have it now. Close your eyes. Close your eyes. No peeking. Happy anniversary, sweetheart.
Is it alive?
This one's guaranteed not to run away.
Well, what's his name?
Well, that's up to you.
Oh, hello, yellow dog. He's beautiful. I love him. Thank you. We could always plant corn back there. Plenty of room.
Or pumpkins.
Pumpkins would be great.
More lamb fries. Eat them while they're hot.
Andy, that's your third order.
I am hooked, Elizabeth. Call me Mr. Lamb Fries.
Now, there's a man who knows when he's got something good in his mouth.
You polish off that plate and you break the record. 28. That one makes 26.
Stand back, everybody. The record falls tonight. Look at him go.
I believe he's right. I believe that record will fall tonight.
27.
It stood at 28 for nearly 2 years now.
That long? Go for it, Andrew.
28.
That's a tie. 29, the new record! And he's still going. I thought that record was gonna last forever. Most folks just don't seem to have a taste for testicles no more.
Testicles?
Yes, ma'am. Sheep balls.
That's right.
Tell them why yours are so tasty.
Well, the trick is, you've got to clip them off way up high.
Uh-oh. Looks like we got trouble here. I knew you should have explained these things better in the menu.
Oh, don't be strangers now, you hear?
Welcome back. Thanks for being here. I'm in the dark. Sorry about that. I do all these videos raw and I do them rough and all that because I'm ideally not trying to offer bells and whistles, and it's just doing my best and being as transparent and honest and not being perfect, alright? My purity journey is my own, alright? But just imagine how many sheep balls you've been eating over your life of your spiritual journey, alright? It's meant to be a bit visceral, right? But what many of you have come through to me is like all the bullshit that we've eaten from the spiritual journey, right? So it's dark, it's at the end. I just like that movie, like Chevy Chase, Funny Farm it's from. I remember it was just so funny, right? But it's the metaphor. Just imagine like there's Michelin star sheep ball chefs out there in the spiritual community, and I've eaten up a lot of the shit from it, a lot of people. You've probably eaten a lot of crap to be here as well, to spit out all this crap, to be able to be willing to contemplate this stuff. So I hope this helps. sorry about being dark. It's taking me a lot to get into the mode to do this, and there's a lot of stuff in here that I'll probably offer a lot more depth in the future, but I hope you get a lot from this. I hope you are armed up with all the truth that I've offered, and it's been a fortifying foundation for you to launch from and gaining your own perceptions and appreciation from to help navigate as best you can in this world in these pretty amazing times to be alive, right? So I hope you get a lot from this. I really appreciate you being here and allowing me to be a part of the journey. And until next time, guys, the brat from down under, no longer eating sheep balls of these fuckers out there, alright? Best of luck to you, and I hope you don't eat as much crap as you have in the past anymore. But take care. Thanks for being here. Lots of love. The brat from down under out.
The sun is gonna keep on shining, brighter days on the horizon. My love for you will always keep on rising. Everything's gonna be alright tonight. Oh yeah, my love for you is gonna keep on rising. The sun's gonna keep on shining, bright days on the horizon. My love for you will keep on rising. Everything's gonna be alright. The sun's gonna keep on shining, bright days on the horizon. My love for you will keep on rising. Everything's gonna be
swimming in December, heading for the city lights. 975, sharing each other, nearer than farther. Scent of the lemon drips from your eyes. We are the people that rule the world, what's running in every boy and girl, all rejoicing in the world. Take me now, we can
John Lilly once put it this way: there are no limits at all to the human mind whatsoever, except those we impose on ourselves because of our beliefs. And those limits are also beliefs to be transcended. And that's a view that suggests that the possibilities of human transformation are virtually infinite. And we have no way of knowing the outer horizon of what it means to be human.
And really, to understand all this, everything, you have to go very, very deep into a study of history, consciousness, neurophysiology, everything. You have to be the supreme eclectic type of leaning, and you really have to be wanting to know who you are and what everything's about.
And the thing that you'll find when you go to sacred sites, if you're very humble about it, is that you are on a personal journey, and the sacred site will respond to you in a way that is appropriate only to you. The information is always what you are searching for. And it's the intent you give that energy that defines whether it is used for right action or not. And it is inside these sacred spaces that you will be reminded that you are a god, that you are a bright star.
So what you're trying to do is move through the course without ricocheting off walls or creating karma. You're trying to slide through things smoothly. How do you do that? It's called flowing. There's a technique that you can do that will allow you to touch some part of your inner being that has more knowledge than your conscious state does.